I'm Kieran Lieberthal, and I'm a Yankees fan.
I'm Ernie Broad, erstwhile Dodgers fan until 1958 and Mets fan since then.
But we're both fans of Sandy Koufax. Baseball has really played kind of a big role in my life. Growing up, I would go to Yankees games, I would go to Mets games with my dad and with my aunt, and it was an amazing experience. Yeah, I've been a baseball fan for a while, a big Yankees fan as opposed to the person we're going to talk to today, but you know, it is what it is. In general, has played a very big role in my life, and I'll let you take it away.
Okay, I'm Ernest Broad, known as Ernie. Respond to Ernie only. I'm a member of the Speakers Bureau here at the museum, a Holocaust survivor. Baseball has played a remarkably important role in my life, and I'm a little bit embarrassed to say that it still does. But I'm looking forward to talking about baseball.
I'm looking forward to talking some baseball too. I mean, when we're having this discussion, it's important to realize that we're not just talking about Sandy Koufax through a Jewish lens. I mean, he was also one hell of a baseball player, and I want to explore both sides of that. I think it's really a two-sided conversation because you can't really just look at him and talk about one aspect. I mean, this is an amazing man. This is a 3-time unanimous MVP winner, earliest player ever to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, a complete beast of an arm. Let me just ask you, in the moment when you were watching him play, what did he feel like to you in the prime of his career? Because we'll get to his earlier life later, but in the prime of his career, how electric was it watching him play?
It's hard to describe and to say in words how exciting it was. I love your word electric. That fits really well. It was an event of monumental importance to me to watch him pitch. As you probably know, that period of 5 years between 1961 and 1966 is considered probably the best 5-year span of pitching in baseball history. And to watch him go out there is to see an artist at work. My first thought was to say magician, but I think artist fits better for him. But the results were magic. Just a remarkable player, remarkable person. The fact that he is Jewish, the fact that he was from Brooklyn, just adds to the excitement of the whole issue about Sandy Koufax.
Yeah, and I think that this is something really astonishing that we need to talk about, and that kind of goes unrecognized, because he retired at 30. He's a Hall of Famer, one of the best people to ever do it, and he retired at 30. Not only that, his first 5-6 years in the MLB weren't great. I mean, he was a mediocre pitcher, I think 36 for 40, pretty mid-level ERA. In a 5-year span, he cemented himself as a Hall of Fame. I mean, that's unheard of. That's something that players don't do, especially not nowadays. These late breakout players, it just doesn't happen the same way it used to. In a league back then, I mean, you've watched baseball for a while. What do you think has changed about the game to allow a player to do something like that? To allow a player to kind of break out in that way?
Well, so much has changed. The most important change, which affected his career so much, is that in those days, if you signed someone to a bonus, I forget the amount, but a certain amount of bonus, he had to be on your roster, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Players get signed now, and if somebody comes up to the majors after only maybe 2 years in the minors, that seems remarkable. Here's a guy who went right from college, and not even full college, just I think it was only a year of college, and comes into the major leagues, and he kind of had to sit and watch for a while because he wasn't ready. And when they first gave him a chance, he looked not ready for prime time because he wasn't. So the breakout that came later was all the more surprising and unexpected. It was like a light switch was turned, and all of a sudden he was Sandy Koufax.
There's no better way of putting that. It's almost like a magical effect. Like he just exploded onto the scene in that light. And we have to remember, this is a person who did not play baseball growing up. He was actually known for his basketball playing. He went to college to play basketball.
Exactly right.
He went to college thinking, I'm going to be a point guard or I'm going to be a shooting guard. He was a mix of the two. And I'm going to have a good career in college and I'm going to leave it there. Instead, nope. Picks up baseball, turns it around, gets into the major leagues, doesn't play that well, and then just shoots. I mean, it's remarkable. So, as we've said, this is a two-sided coin, and now I want to go to the other side of the coin, which is as a Jew, as a Jewish baseball player in a league where there were no other Jewish baseball players, what was it like seeing someone? How inspiring was it to see someone like Sandy Koufax do it when no one else did it?
It was amazing. There actually were a couple of other Jewish players in that era. Flip Rosen for the Giants, Goody Rosen before that for the Dodgers, Babe Herman. These were in the earlier part of my baseball fandom, a couple of years before what you're focusing on. So it's not that I had never experienced a Jewish player. Cal Abrams of the Brooklyn Dodgers was famous for being thrown out at home in a World Series game. But for years, Cal Abrams was the Jewish ball player that I and other Jewish kids could follow. And then it really wasn't until the Dodgers moved to Los Angeles. I feel like spitting when you say that. Tweet, tweet. It wasn't until they moved to Los Angeles that Sandy Koufax broke out in that way. So unfortunately, I didn't get to see him as much as I wanted to, because in those years, games from the West Coast were not being telecast except once in a while. When he came to pitch against the Mets, I hated that because I was a crazy Mets fan after the Dodgers left, and also a crazy Sandy Koufax fan. So that was conflict. I didn't like when he pitched against the Dodgers. The Dodgers actually, though, against the Mets actually beat him once in a 1-0 game, and that was remarkable.
I mean, to be fair, it's very hard to beat him. To beat Sandy Koufax, I mean, in his prime, that's insane. Especially for a Mets team, which at the time, I mean, you can speak to how good they were, but it's a little lower, on the lower end, right?
So the Jewish aspect, which you were asking me about, of course, was phenomenal. It just added to the excitement and luster of the whole thing of following his career. And he really wasn't very much of a public Jew. He did not make much of his Jewishness, except, of course, for the famous incident when he refused to pitch in the World Series on Yom Kippur. That got a lot of excitement, and that was really something.
Yeah, I mean, so there's two things that he did throughout his career, in my opinion. I mean, you're the expert here, but that kind of stuck out to me. First was the Yom Kippur game, which I will ask you about that in a second, because I can't even imagine seeing someone hold out for religious purposes as a whole, but more specifically for Jewish religious purposes, in a world that's much less accepting than it is today, had to have been insane to hear about. And the second thing that I want to ask you about, not to throw too much at you, is the money holdout, where he essentially paved the way for NIL, a lot of what the athletes today are doing when they're trying to get more money, when they're saying, I'm not getting paid enough, I don't want to play for you if I'm not going to get paid the amount that you owe me. And this is a player coming off of an injury, and it felt like the team was exploiting him to a degree. How did you, when you saw both the Yom Kippur game and the money holdout, and how did you see him as a person, both as a person and an athlete, be an influence on you and on the people around? How did the world react? How did people react to that?
Your question is a lot better than my answer is going to be. The whole not pitching on Yom Kippur was just an earth-shaking kind of thing for a Jewish young person. Most Jews. It was an opening to the rest of the world about what it means to be a Jew for people who had never had reason to think about that. But all of a sudden they think they're getting ready to watch a World Series, and they're getting all this stuff about Jews don't do certain things on certain holidays. A lot of people were going, "What?" You know? So that was really something. I don't have a clear memory of the holdout. What year was that? Do you remember?
I don't remember the year exactly.
It must have been later in his career. He wouldn't have done it early on. Maybe I've intentionally pushed it aside. The idea of all of the calumny about Jews and money and whatnot must have been in my head at that time, and I think probably I found it an unattractive thing to have to focus on. But for whatever reason, I really don't remember it that well.
That's fair. Nor should you have. I mean, it was most likely something more discussed. It's reflected on today. It was most likely something at the time more discussed within him, his coach, his manager, and whatnot. That being said, I want to point to him a little bit more in this light and as a legacy and into his influence and to his influence on the pitchers today. And because there's a difference. There are pitchers, people play to their strength. People play to how good they are at certain things, and there are people who can throw you 90-mile-per-hour fastball and leave it there. He wasn't that. I mean, he had change-ups. He was, as you said earlier, as you put so well, an artist. What made him an artist and not this one-trick pony kind of?
His skills were widespread. His fastball was terrific. It wasn't Bob Feller level or people who throw at 100 today. I don't think he was throwing at 100. They weren't measuring fastballs back in those days. But he had an insanely good curveball with a spectacular break on it. So the difference in speed between his curves and his fastball and the changeup, what do they call it? There's a different terminology for the changeup. I still call it a change?
Yeah, they call it changeup.
I think there's a different term that I'm trying to remember. But, at any rate, the difference in speed between the change, the curve, and the fastball was remarkable, and it kept batters off balance all the time. He was also a brainy pitcher, not a pitcher who just had some particular strength and just lived with that strength and built on it. He had the ability to mix his pitches. He knew which pitch to throw at what point in the count to which batter, and it was really a work of art to watch him pitch and control a game. His control was spectacular. He rarely walked people. You see, today's ball, even the best pitchers walk 3-4 batters a game, and that's considered okay. In his time, baseball was different, and he was different from most pitchers, and his control was spectacular.
I mean, we have to remember how good he was as a player. The fact that he won a unanimous MVP, I didn't look into how many people have won unanimous MVPs. The only one I can think of in recent memory is Stephen Curry in 2015, 2016. And that season was something, don't have to get into basketball now, but the fact that he was able to have a season not only on par, but surpassing that, it is incredible. I mean, his ability to throw the ball, to really throw, as you said, batters off balance, to switch it up, to really craft a game plan is both not just unmatched, but also I hesitate to say unattainable, because with the talent in today's league, with how good players are, anything is possible. But man, someone would have to be really on another level to have that same 5-year stretch to be able to do that.
The concept of wins above replacement, WAR, which has become so big in recent years, did not exist then, but they have gone back statistically and historically and try to work that out. I don't know what the number is, but his WAR must have been spectacular because he was just so much better than the average pitcher of that time, which is what WAR measures. He had some really good pitchers, and then there was Sandy Koufax. I mean, he really was in a league by himself. And you're really reminding me of the excitement. I'm picturing him on the mound with that wonderful left-handed motion. I had a cousin by marriage in those days, who was a Yankee fan, which was a problem to start with. Did not like the Dodgers, and it bothered him that I and others in the family were so excited about Sandy Koufax. And at one point he said, his pitching motion, you say it's so artistic. It's kind of like almost like feminine to me. And it was such
In what sense?
I think he meant artistic in that sense compared to a male strength kind of thing. But in one sense, I kind of thought I knew what he meant. In another sense, I didn't like that formulation at all. It's just, you're bringing back wonderful memories.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't experience it. I wish I did. I wish I had those memories. I know when in a while down the road, I'm gonna look back on some memories of some players I watched today, and it's gonna be amazing.
Indeed.
I can only picture it for you. The pushing over to, again, the other side of the coin. He, not famously, I actually don't think it was talked about as much, but he was a big. Not only did he face anti-Semitism, right, as with a lot of Jewish players at the time, and as with a lot of Jews in the world at the time, but he not only dealt with that himself and kind of kept a high head, kept his chest out, and went through it. He helped his teammates, not just Jews, but other people of all sorts of races. He helped them out. He helped them deal with it, and I think that's a testament to his character and who he is as a person too. Obviously retiring at 30 because of I think it was arthritis in his elbow, right?
Yeah.
It's a really bad thing, especially when he was so good, or at least 2 years before. But you didn't really get to see how much of who he is as a person. I mean, the veterans, I like to say that the veterans in the majority of sports are really the ones who you want to look to and look towards, and who players look up to. I mean, retiring at 30, you're not really considered much of a vet.
Yeah.
It was harder for players to look up to him, and surprising given how much influence he has today. So,
well, his character somehow came through at an early stage, as you say, only in the mid and late 20s as a kid. But you could see what he was made of, and you could see how he was raised. And you can see it, as you correctly pointed out, in the way he helped Jackie Robinson. Having gone through some of the slights of anti-Semitism, it was nothing like what Jackie Robinson went through, but it was in the same general direction, and he kind of was able to help guide Jackie Robinson about how to respond and not respond to the things that were happening. But as you point out, he was so young when he was retired. I'm trying to remember why it was so clear at that age what a real person he was, if I can use the word mensch, which he so clearly wasn't, and still is. He still shows up at spring training for the Tui Tui, Los Angeles Dodgers. And he's still considered, as he should be, a hero. And young pitchers ask him questions, which he's happy to answer. So he's just my hero in so many different directions, and you're hitting on almost all of them.
I mean, that's the appeal. That's the appeal with him. He is not just your hero, not just, I mean, in some ways my hero, but kind of everyone's hero. He spoke for the Jewish people in a way in the MLB that not many people have, at a time when it was not frowned upon, but it was at least much less expected than it is today, and it was a much more hostile environment.
Are you familiar with the Hank Greenberg
I know him.
saga?
Yeah.
So before Sandy Koufax, the Jewish player that all Jews could rally around and be so proud of was Hank Greenberg. If not for him, I don't think there would have been much awareness that there were Jews in baseball at all. Hank Greenberg was at the time the player who came closest to Babe Ruth's home run record. He hit 58 home runs one year. And famously, the anti-Semites of baseball did not pitch to him in the final days to make sure he didn't get an opportunity to tie Babe Ruth's 60 home run record. They wanted that record to stay sacrosanct and certainly not be bettered by a Jewish player. So before Sandy Koufax, there was Hank Greenberg.
I mean, we just looked back. I'm going to look forward a little, just to end it off. Is there anyone today, either in today's game or in recent memory, who you can think of, who kind of you would look to as an inspiration in the same way, or it's hard to have a similar light. It's really hard to have a similar light to Sandy Koufax, but in a tangential light.
No, there are a bunch of Jewish players now, probably more than there have been in the past. There's no one Jewish player who kind of grabbed me, who I can get really excited about and proud of. Art Shamsky of the Mets, when they won the World Series in '68,
Yeah.
he was a star of that. That was kind of exciting. I'm not sure much more than that
That's fair.
comes to mind for the more current era.
I mean, again, it's almost impossible to replicate that level of influence, that level of importance. Let's turn the focus of this talk to you for a second. Growing up, I mean, you lived in Brooklyn, just like Sandy Koufax. There's a connection there. You love Sandy Koufax. You love baseball. What got you into baseball? What got you into him? Kind of, what's your story?
Sure. Well, I arrived as a refugee child at the age of 3, having escaped from Vienna, so I'm a Holocaust survivor. Obviously, at the age of 3, I spoke German. Quickly learned at that age, kids can very quickly learn another language. You just listen to the radio for a while and you hear people on the street and you pick it up. So I pretty quickly learned English, but still I felt like an outsider. I was different. I was a refugee kid. I hadn't been born here. I had spoken another language first. I was a little uncomfortable. And I desperately wanted to be one of the gang, like the other guys, one of the boys. And I could see how the other guys were spending their time, and that was listening to Brooklyn Dodger games. So that clicked. I quickly understood that was the route to becoming an American and becoming like everybody else. You needed to understand baseball and follow the Brooklyn Dodgers. So I quickly learned. I listened to every game. I learned how to play the game out in the streets. I learned how to become part of the conversation among kids about this player and that player and the other player and so on. Just get into the lingo. I started calculating batting averages in my head because I was pretty good with arithmetic.
Moneyball
And,
before Moneyball.
Yeah. I would paste papers on my wall at home with the standings and the batting averages and so on. I really got into it. So there was a purpose to getting into it, but once I got into it, I fell in love far beyond the purpose. There was something about baseball that just captivated me. So I became the craziest Brooklyn Dodger fan imaginable. And now at the age of 87, I still record every Mets game and watch them at night after my wife goes to sleep. In other words, I'm still a crazy baseball fan, just Mets instead of Dodgers. So I have to show you this. I have switched over the years from
My God.
Brooklyn Dodgers to
The New York Mets.
New York
We have
Mets.
both the Caps.
And from Brooklyn Dodgers to New York Mets.
It's a nice jacket.
So the question I get when I speak to groups about my Holocaust history, and I speak very frequently to groups about my Holocaust history, the question I get from the audience most frequently is, when the Brooklyn Dodgers left and went to Los Angeles, did you continue to root for the Dodgers? So it's not just me who's interested in baseball. The world out there still is. But that's a long way of answering your question about how I got into baseball.
That is an amazing answer. I just want to say, even if it's on a personal note, I don't know, for whatever, I know exactly what you're talking. I can relate to that feeling about being obsessed with the sport, to the point. I mean, I do a lot of like college football scouting and stuff like that. I understand exactly what you were talking about. I mean, that feeling is so like you jump down a rabbit hole, and then you pin your ears back and sprint down it. It is such a good feeling to really be passionate about something.
Very well put.
Especially sports.
But how did you get so involved with Sandy Koufax? That's quite a ways from college football.
So it's actually a funny story, if anything. I had a friend at school. I was always a Yankees fan growing up. I was a Brett Gardner, Derek Jeter, that type of team. I loved that team. I would go to a game every weekend. One of my best friends, when I was little, I'm not as close with him anymore, was not to your level, but he was obsessed with baseball. I mean, he loved baseball. He loved everything about it. He loved the history and whatnot. And I forget who the Yankees pitcher was at the time. It was this backup pitcher, and they were doing a rotation. This was in a game against the Stingrays. I remember it so vividly. I went to it with him, my dad, and my aunt, like a figure who I call her. And I turned to him. I was like, "That's a really good pitch. I bet you couldn't show me a pitch better than that pitch." And I didn't have a phone at that time. He didn't have a phone at that time. This was a while ago. I thought that pitch was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And he pulls out his iPad and he shows me this old black and white footage of Sandy Koufax.
Oh wow.
Of one of Sandy Koufax's pitches, and I was astonished. Went home and I asked my dad about him. I was like, "Who is this guy?" Because he didn't tell me much about the player. He was just like, "This is a cool pitch." And my dad started explaining. He didn't know as much, but it was what it was. And then I went on Wikipedia. I did my research. And then as I became more and more obsessed with the sport of baseball, which was granted a younger me, but it was there, I became more and more obsessed with him, and he kind of followed me along in that journey. So that was kind of the story going in. So we're talking about Sandy Koufax. We're talking about Jewish people. You are someone who is a Holocaust survivor, who has a deep connection to the Jewish faith. We talked about the side of Andy Koufax. He was an amazing player, great baseball player. Now, who was he as a Jew, and what did he mean to you as a Jew? What did he mean to you as a Jewish player?
It was tremendously important. We were not that far removed from World War II at that time. All those issues were still in the air. And to have a Jewish baseball player who was that capable, who was that good, and who also clearly was a person of integrity, a person who made a good impression. He could speak English well. He could speak grammatically and intelligently, unlike many other baseball players of that era. Someone who didn't flash his religion around, but paid enough attention to it that when it came time to have to make a decision between his religion and baseball in that famous World Series game, he decided not to pitch on Yom Kippur. That was a wonderful decision for Jews to see, and for Jews to imagine non-Jews seeing, and how they must have reacted to the fact that he made a decision of that kind. It was just almost indescribable. A spectacular player from Brooklyn who was Jewish. Put that all together, and it was almost overwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I know that especially with football, I watch a lot of football. In today's NFL, there's not many Jews. I mean, let's put it out there. In college football, there's not many Jews. In baseball, there's still a couple. We still got some, but there's not many. I mean, the levels have really fallen off, and they've never really been that high. But to see someone today, to look back and see someone who even in that time was able to be that good of a player, well dealing with anti-Semitism, well being a role model for younger Jewish boys, it's not only something to look up to, but something to cherish, something to look back to, and kind of look to when you're thinking about who you want to be and how you want to present yourself to the world. As you said so perfectly, he was presentable. He didn't flash his religion around, and he put a good face on Jews everywhere. And looking back, especially with the state of Jewish athletes right now, I think that he could be, he hasn't only been a role model for me in many ways, but he could be a huge role model for potential Jewish athletes. And I think that there's a lot of value in that. Yeah.
You said it really well.
Thank you. It was amazing talking to you today.
My pleasure.
I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed every second of it. So.
You asked wonderful questions. It's been fun.
Thank you so much.